Lang nerds, welcome to eLang Explained. This video is a part of our core curriculum series where we break down some of the key concepts and pieces of meta-language from Units 1 to 4 English language. Today we're delving into syntax to talk specifically about the different sentence structures. So, what are the sentence structures? The easiest way to remember these, the mnemonic that we suggest using, is FS and the 4 Cs, because our sentence structures are fragment sentences, simple sentences, compound sentences, complex sentences, and compound complex sentences. Now, it's really important to remember that these are the different sentence structures and that sentence structures are different to sentence types. Whenever you see a question about sentence structures, it's really important to remember that this is only asking you about fragment sentences, simple sentences, compound sentences, complex sentences, and compound complex sentences. Let's go through each of the sentence structures in a little bit more detail now. So, fragment sentences are our first sentence structure because this type of sentence is missing either the subject or the verb or the object. So these kinds of sentences aren't completed sentences. They can't stand alone as grammatically correct sentences. So we've got two examples here. The first, are you? This is a fragment sentence because the phrase going to the shops has been ellipted and we're missing that verb going and we're missing that object, the shops. Our second fragment sentence here, where? Another interrogative that's fragment because it's missing a lot of information. Now, you will often see fragment sentences used in text where people are speaking to participants because they're expecting the other participant to be able to infer and fill in the gap with this information. So if you're having a conversation with your friends about where you're going to go in the city on the weekend and your friend says, where, you'll be able to infer that they're talking about a specific location. But if you don't have that close social distance with someone and they use a fragment sentence, you might have to work a little bit harder to infer that information and be able to figure out what has been ellipted from this sentence. Next up, we have simple sentences. Now, simple sentences have a subject, a verb, and an object. They are a grammatically complete sentence, but they only contain one single independent clause. These are the sentences that we are probably most familiar with seeing because they are one key idea. So we've got the sentence example. There is a picture of a cat in the thumbnail for this video. We've also got the interrogative. Do you remember the 5 different sentence types? And the imperative, remember the mnemonic FS and the 4 Cs. Now, sentence structures are different to sentence types, but it's important to remember that there can be some overlap when we're looking at a text. And often we'll see short answer questions that will ask things like, discuss the role of sentence structures in the text or analyze the variation in sentence structures. And unfortunately, lots of students will get tricked here and end up writing about sentence types. Of course, we can have a simple sentence that is also declarative, like the first example here. But it's really important to remember to focus your analysis on the concepts that you are being asked about. So if you get a short answer question that asks you about sentence structure, make sure you're only talking about sentence structures. Next up, we have compound sentences. And here things start to get a little bit more complicated because with a compound sentence, we have 2 or more independent clauses, but they're joined by a coordinating conjunction. Now, we are really lucky in English because we actually have a finite number of coordinating conjunctions and we can remember them using the mnemonic fanboys. So if you're ever looking at a sentence and thinking, ooh, is this a compound sentence or is it a different sentence structure? The first test is to look for those coordinating conjunctions. So in our first example sentence, cats are my favorite animal, but I also like birds. We've got that coordinating conjunction, but, so we can check off that it's probably a compound sentence. Our second test, though, is to make sure that we can identify the 2 independent clauses in our sentence. So, cats are my favorite animal is an independent clause. Check, because it can stand on its own as a simple sentence. I also like birds. Again, check, This is an independent clause because it can stand on its own as a simple sentence. Let's have a look at the second example. This is a video that explains each sentence structure and provides examples of the different sentence structures. So, test 1. Is there a coordinating conjunction? Check. We've got and. Can we break this compound sentence down into two simple sentences? Let's check this. So, independent clause 1. This is a video that explains each sentence structure. That's a simple sentence. It's got a subject, it's got a verb, it's got an object. Let's have a look at independent clause 2. Provides examples of the different sentence structures. Now, this one is also an independent clause because we've ellipted from the beginning, this is a video that, to avoid that repetition, because it would be a pretty clunky sentence if it said, this is a video that explains each sentence structure and this is a video that provides examples of the different sentence structures. But it's still an independent clause because this is a video that provides examples of the different sentence structures is still a simple sentence that can stand on its own. We've got a subject, this is the video, the verb, provides, and then the object, examples of the different sentence structures. Now, then we have complex sentences. Now, complex sentences contain at least one independent clause. So an element of a sentence that cannot stand on its own. It's not a simple sentence. If we were going to classify it as anything, if it was on its own, it would be a fragment sentence. And at least one dependent clause that are joined by a subordinating conjunction. Now, unfortunately, unlike those coordinating conjunctions, there is not a set list of subordinating conjunctions in English. So at the bottom of this slide, I've listed some of our most common subordinating conjunctions. And we've got subordinating conjunctions like if, since, as, when, although, while, after, before, until, and because. So when we're looking to see if a sentence is complex, test 1 is seeing if we can identify a subordinating conjunction. And then test 2 is seeing if we can break our sentence down into one simple sentence and one fragment sentence. Let's have a go with the first example. After 15 minutes of reading time, you will have 2 hours of writing time. So, can we see a subordinating conjunction? Check. We've got after right at the beginning. Now, after 15 minutes of reading time is a fragment. It's not a simple sentence. It's an independent clause here. Now, after 15 minutes of reading time is our dependent clause here, because it couldn't stand on its own as a complete simple sentence. However, you will have 2 hours of writing time is our independent clause, because this could stand as a simple sentence. It's got that subject, the verb, and the object. Let's have a go at example 2. Remember to take an umbrella with you on a walk when it rains. Test 1. Do we have a subordinating conjunction? Check. We've got when in there. Now, this sentence has our independent clause first because remember to take an umbrella with you on a walk is our independent clause. This can stand as a simple sentence on its own because it rains would be a fragment sentence if it were to stand on its own. It's not a simple sentence. So, when we're thinking about compound complex sentences, it's important for us to remember that this type of sentence structure has at least 2 independent clauses and at least 1 dependent clause that are joined by a subordinating conjunction and a coordinating conjunction. So when we're trying to figure out if a sentence structure is compound complex, our first test is looking for the subordinating conjunction. Our second test is looking for the coordinating conjunction. And then our third test is seeing if we can break the sentence down into 2 independent clauses and a dependent clause. Let's have a go with example 1. While editing this video, my cat jumped onto the desk and my bird flew into the room. So, test 1. Have we got a subordinating conjunction? Check. We've got while right at the beginning of this sentence. Test 2. Have we got a coordinating conjunction? Check. We've got the presence of and. Okay, now that brings us up to test 3. So we have to see if we can break this sentence down into 2 independent clauses and 1 dependent clause. Our dependent clause in this sentence is while editing this video, because this couldn't stand as a simple sentence on its own. But my cat jumped onto the desk has a subject, a verb, and an object, so that's an independent clause. And the second independent clause is my bird flew into the room. Again, we've got a subject, a verb, and an object. So this is another independent clause, which is what makes this sentence compound complex. Let's have a go now with example 2. After a walk, I thought I heard a noisy myna bird, but it flew away before I could see. So, test 1. Have we got a subordinating conjunction? Check. Just like the first sentence, we've got our subordinating conjunction right at the front of this sentence with after. Test 2. Have we got a coordinating conjunction? Check. We've got but separating our two independent clauses. And then test 3. Can we see two independent clauses and one dependent clause? So our dependent clause is right at the beginning, after a walk. And this dependent clause is telling us when this activity has happened, which is why it's fronted here. Our independent clauses, though, are I thought I heard a noisy myna bird, and the independent clause, it flew away. Now, our first dependent clause is right at the beginning of this sentence with after a walk. But this compound complex sentence is a little bit tricky because there's actually a second dependent clause that comes after the second subordinating conjunction before. So we've got our first dependent clause, after a walk, but our second dependent clause is I could see, right at the end of this sentence. And then kind of sandwiched in the middle, we've got our two independent clauses. I thought I heard a noisy myna bird is our first independent clause with the subject, verb, and the object. And then our second independent clause is it flew away, where again, it's much shorter, but it is our subject, flew is our verb, and away is our object. So it flew away is another independent clause. Now, this sentence is a little bit tricky because when we think about compound complex sentences, we often first think about sentences that just have two independent clauses and one dependent clause. But it's really important to remember that we can have more dependent clauses, we can have more independent clauses in a compound complex sentence, as long as we have at least two independent and one dependent clauses. Now we're going to have a look at a text that you probably haven't seen before. This text is taken from the returns policy section of the Vegemite Australia online merchandise store. And if you haven't visited Vegemite's merch store, it's definitely worth a look. In this section of the website though, Vegemite provide information to customers who are looking to return Vegemite branded clothing that they've purchased. So take a moment now, have a read of the text, and see if you can identify each of the sentence structures in this text. Okay, how did you go? So you can see here that I've started to colour code the different sentence structures in this text. Our fragment sentences are in blue. Returns policy, returns Australian orders are fragments because they don't have a subject, a verb, and an object. In green, we've got our simple sentences that are just that one independent clause that has a subject, a verb, and an object. Then in red, we've got our compound sentence. So here there are two independent clauses and a coordinating conjunction. Yellow are our complex sentences. So we've got a subordinating conjunction, an independent clause, and a dependent clause. And then lucky last in purple is a compound complex sentence. But you've probably noticed that there's a sentence here that hasn't been color-coded yet. And so my challenge for you today is to have a look at this very long sentence and see if you can identify the sentence structure. If you can, add it in the comments below. Sentence structures are fragment sentences, simple sentences, compound sentences, complex sentences, and compound complex sentences. But the sentence types are declarative, interrogative, imperative, and exclamative. And if you need a quick refresher on the sentence types, make sure to check out our sentence types video. We know that There are lots of questions that get asked every year in lots of different schools that ask students to identify sentence structures. And for a lot of students in the state, they will get tricked by these kinds of questions. So if you see a short answer question about sentence structure, make sure that you only discuss sentence structures. In an AC or an essay though, it can be a strategic choice to double your meta language and label the sentence type and structure of the example that you're talking about. If you're going to do this though, it's really important that you make sure to analyze the ways that both the type and the structure of the sentence impact the text. So if you're someone in an AC or an essay who is looking to double their meta language, you might talk about a sentence being a simple declarative sentence. But if you do that, you have to be able to explain how the fact that this is a simple sentence impacts the text, and how the fact that this sentence is declarative allows it to give a very specific piece of information. So it can be the strategic choice to help you double your meta language, but it's really important to make sure that if you're going to do that, you are comfortable and confident analysing both structure and type. But that's all we have time for today. So be kind to yourself, take care of yourself, and I'll see you next time for more Elang Explained.